Welcome to PowerUp podcast, the podcast that seeks to empower and dismantle, giving us the power and confidence to question, deconstruct, rebuild, and expand in life. I'm your host, Amma Rouge, voiceover and multidisciplinary artist, well-being advocate, food and book geek with over 14 years of movement-centered experience.
I am your host, Ella Mesma, artist, choreographer, yogi and coach with a passion for alchemy, creativity, transformation and workplace wellness.
We recognise that we can't dismantle and empower or be empowered without first learning ourselves, diving deeper to unlearn the harmful, restrictive and unprogressive. It's an ongoing practice and journey for us all, which is why we created this podcast.
Our show features guests doing the work to enlighten, deconstruct and power up in their own magical ways.
We're going to be having conversations around the power of healing, transformation, well-being and creativity, and how they feed our personal and collective evolution, how they help us power up. Today we have Bellatrix in the house. Me and Ella are super excited. Welcome, Belle!
Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for choosing to come and hang out with us. Belle's pronouns are they, them. They are a queer, non-binary, cosmic, anarchist, earth witch, or musician. There are multifaceted artists, and then there's Bellatrix. A spellbinding singer and instinctively expressive songwriter, a multi-instrumentalist, a versatile performer and former world beatbox champion. Bellatrix complements artistic wholeness with an inventive, all-encompassing and hands-on creative vision that can't help but resonate. Starting out as a first professional female beatboxer in the UK, Bellatrix, who now identifies as non-binary, has been a trailblazer in their field and is a fierce advocate for those who are underrepresented in their communities. Bellatrix has since been making a name for themselves as both a solo artist and a highly sought-after collaborator, touring internationally and performing at many of the top festivals and venues across the world. Bellatrix is currently playing bass for Grammy-nominated artist Neo, releasing daring pop music as a solo artist, and also has a monthly radio show on Soho Radio. Go and listen. Links will be in the show notes, as always. They recently co-created the project Like Mercury, a dance music collaboration with dancer Emma Houston that interrogates exclusionary dominant narratives of success and happiness through a queer lens. And I went to experience that and it was absolutely phenomenal. So it's an absolute pleasure, seriously, a massive joy to have you on the show, Belle. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really very pleased to be here.
Welcome. I'm like listening to that bio, and you just go a bit speechless, like, I'm so amazed. You're so amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I had it written for me by a really amazing journalist. And every time I listen to it, I'm just like, oh, yeah, he really did that justice. I feel.
Yeah, you're incredible.
It's so inspiring to be in the presence of incredible humans. So
it really is.
I just
really
all in my
is.
feels right now doing this with you too.
And there's so many things that we want to ask you about.
Yeah.
Where to begin?
So many things. And so this whole series that we're doing at the moment is all around talking about gender identity. And we know that gender is a really huge topic and we're not going to be able to get into everything and explore everything within it. So can we just say that first, disclaimer?
Of course.
And but what we can do is talk about some of it and dive into some of it and open conversations and share. And so that's what we're doing with all our guests around this theme, and that's what we're doing today with Belle. And so to start, I guess what would be really nice would be to find out, and I know our listeners are probably curious as well, whether you're, one, like, are you happy to define yourself? And if so, how do you define yourself? And how do you feel about us even asking you to define yourself?
That's a really good way of asking that question. I guess, firstly, how I feel about being asked to define myself is probably a little bit overwhelmed, to be honest. I think that all humans are expected to define ourselves in these very black and white, very binary ways, and fit into sort of prescriptive boxes that are just completely, they just don't leave space for the multidimensionality of all people, you know.
Yes.
And so when I sort of think about, oh gosh, how do I define myself? Yeah, it just feels very, very overwhelming. And also how I see myself and how I experience myself is very often in flux. And so I may define myself in one way today on a whatever day it is. I don't even know. Thursday?
Yeah, I don't know either, actually.
Oh dear.
I'm like, I can't answer that.
Maybe Wednesday, yeah.
And my housemate just said, I just joined a Zoom group thinking it was Friday. So yeah, maybe it's...
It could be any of those days. But yeah, you know, one day I may define myself as a bunch of things, and then a few days later I'm like, nah, none of them anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like for a long time I actually defined myself by my craft and my art and my disciplines as a creative. And also very much define myself as a female creative, which really actually didn't come from me. Okay, it was kind of put on me. I was always seen as a female beatboxer, and that was because I was operating in a very male-dominated space, and I was the only assigned female human. And at the time, I had no language around gender expansiveness. I just thought there was two options: man, woman. And I'm like, okay, well, I have to be this one then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did really define myself as a female artist for a long time, and so yeah, there's been some times when I've sort of put myself in situations where people don't know who I am. So because a lot of my life, I've sort of been in circles and situations where people know who I am and what I do, and sort of will, I don't know, like respect me to a degree or whatever. And there's been times when I've taken myself out of those situations where, like, you know, I'm nobody or whatever, and I've just been a bit like, oh my gosh, who am I? And those times have been the most sort of, well, really good for growing and finding out who I actually really am. But I still don't know the answer to who.
It's so powerful though, and that, you know, how much the external can end up impacting our definition, and even that external pressure to define when we are, probably every human is actually on a lifelong journey of discovery of who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peeling off layers.
Yeah. It's got me thinking, this actually isn't anything to do with gender, but it's got me, well, maybe it is, I don't know. But it's got me thinking about different moments in my life where I've met and made different friends, and kind of that is their beginning point from when they know me, you know, and how they understand my identity to be. And depending on when friends have met me in my life journey, they will have some of the same, maybe added input, added ideas about who I am and around who I am. And it's really interesting when I spend time with friends who maybe have known me, for example, since uni, or maybe then friends who have known me since high school, and friends who met me at dance college, friends who I met on a workshop like 3 weeks ago. It's so interesting, people's concept of who I am and what my identity is. And, you know, just to give some physical examples for people to grasp onto, some people don't know I did a politics degree. And when they hear that, they're really confused. They're like, oh my gosh, what? But politics and dance are so different. I don't understand. How can you possibly be interested in both? And why would you study both? Or, some people know me as Andrea, which is my first name, and Amma is my middle name. And there was a point where I only went by Andrea, and that was what people know me as, or even versions, shortenings of that, like Ange and and so when sometimes those groups of friends meet and then they introduce me and then they introduce me as Amma, and then they're like, oh, I don't know, what do you go by now? And I'm like, well, they're all me, so it's fine. Like, you can introduce me as any of them, like, it's fine. But it's just really interesting, that journey of evolving and of becoming. And I don't think you ever arrive. I don't think it stops, but it's just, I enjoy witnessing these little like nuances with how people interact with me, and how much kind of information, I guess, they hold around who they understand me to be.
And isn't it interesting, like, I don't know if you experience this, but how when you are in space with someone who you've known for a long time, who may not have a holistic sort of sense of who you are now, including all the growth you've done since you spent a lot of time with them, it can be that there can be a interesting interaction with that maybe I don't know, somehow pulls you into an earlier version of yourself. Or
I was going to ask about, like, you end up playing the role of that version of you from say 7 years ago. And I wondered, like, particularly, within the beatbox community, like, I also had a similar experience in terms of kind of growing up in the breaking world, where I kind of chose this career path, this form that has gender very much connected to it, but was constantly made very aware of being in a female body. And then how it's like, then I felt very limited, because I also knew that the construct in that world, there was this almost glass ceiling for me based on gender. And I wonder, like, how are you navigating that now within that space, or do you not occupy that space anymore? How do you navigate that as you now, or as you as a multidimensional person who can be whoever you want to be?
To be honest, I'm taking time out of the beatboxing community at the moment. I don't know really for how long, and part of that's to do with my journey. It's hard to say really how much of that has to do with my own journey, like with non-binariness, and how much of it is actually just the stinking sexism that is just like everywhere.
Right. Yeah. And I'm on a similar journey of, do I go back to breaking, or is that a part of my life that I actually can't, or a space that I don't feel I can be my whole self
it's
in?
really hard. It's really hard, and it's really sad, because I think that there's a lot of people who are and have been dear friends, and but it's just it's so complicated. I feel quite sad about it, because it is a community that I have been a part of for 20 years. And also I feel really angry, and I feel at the moment I'm in a phase of anger where I'm just very much like, no, I'm not gonna engage with this. Da, da, da. Very much. And I'm also aware that there's sort of there's always just so many things going on at the same time, and more than one thing is true, and it's not all terrible. And I have had nurturing from that scene, as well as having not been nurtured. And I guess at the moment what I really feel like I need is to be around, only really as much as possible, be around people who are just willing to and able to engage with with conversations around like like around oppression, really,
Mm.
on a deep level, you know.
Yeah. And does that feel very connected to kind of your decisions about your identity now?
I feel like the way that it's connected is that I guess with sexism in the beatboxing community, it has been something that I've just sort of bit my lip about a lot of the time, kept silent, not spoken. Well, actually, I have spoken up a lot, and I've also been very. I
Yeah.
feel like I've been kept to the edge of decision-making processes, kept very to the edge because I am a bit of a danger to the status quo.
Right.
And sort of coming out to myself as non-binary and just really just coming closer and closer to, or like, you know, further and further away from who I'm not, maybe, or just the more
Love that.
kind of layers that I peel off and the more that I like step into myself as who I am. And yeah, that kind of does include, it does include me coming out to myself as non-binary, and also as someone who's just like not prepared to take any shit on matters.
What would you say has been your most affirming or positive experience regarding who you are, Belle?
I feel like I guess coming into a relationship with other non-binary people has been really, really affirming for me. I have very much been in cis hetero spaces, my whole life really, and intentionally kind of making a point of surrounding myself with other queer identities and other non-binary, trans and non-binary people has been very, very affirming. Having relationships with non-binary people has been, really, really special in a way that I guess like just being able to speak and be understood is like quite rare with like this kind of topic of conversation, I suppose. There's a lot of answering questions. People have lots of questions to ask, and like answering questions, like curious friends wanting to know. And I love that. I'm so up for sharing. I'm really up for, I'm someone who is up for sharing my experience, and I don't find it well, sometimes I'm like, okay, I don't want to talk about this anymore, go away and read a book about it.
Yeah. Which is very human, isn't it?
Yeah, I've heard of Google.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am not Google.
But in general, I'm really grateful for conversations and being able to have conversations with people who like have shared experiences is just so fulfilling and affirming. And just like being with people who see me in like that really deep way is just like, I don't know, it's like nothing else. It's really incredible. And like just when people make an effort with pronouns and stuff, I really understand that changing like language is like changing a habit, and it's a process that takes practice. And I do not expect people just to change their language immediately if they haven't got practice with it. But when people use gender neutral pronouns, for me it feels good, and language is so important, and to remove the sort of genderedness from how I'm referred to mainly just feels really affirming, particularly like in a world where I'm really sort of largely seen and considered to be a woman. When people are prepared to engage with me on that level, it feels fucking great.
Yeah.
Yes. And I wonder, like, this feels to me this sort of, or maybe this is just my personal experience of this connection to kind of like unlearning society, unlearning oppression, also unlearning those experiences where I haven't been empowered. And I am probably referring quite a lot to my experience within the breaking community, for example, where or in the dance scene, where like there's been so many moments where like I remember I asked the director if I could shave my head, and it was like, absolutely not, because in the show you need to have long hair, or, you know, being put in a dress that's really tiny and I don't actually want to wear, you know, all of these layers. It's like this kind of beautiful reclaiming that we can do with language and with care and compassion and tenderness for human beings and the reality of the multidimensionalness of being a human and having a human experience.
Yeah.
And on that note, I wonder, Belle, I know you've been kind of living with long COVID for quite a while. And again, like as artists, we're often expected to present as superheroes. And I wondered if you'd be willing to talk a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I got COVID in November 2021, and it's currently June 2022. And yeah, I've been sort of on a journey with healing from that ever since, and it sort of looked very different at different times. And at at its worst, it's sort of been a case of just being completely bedbound for, like, you know, every day, even sort of, you know, can't read, like serious sensory overwhelm, can't really read or listen to music, can't really get up and go to, well, you obviously can, like, I would get up and go to the toilet and that would just wipe me out. And yeah, I have spent a lot of the past 6 months in bed, and I'm still sort of, if I do something that uses more energy than I have, which is most things really, I just will then sort of be bedbound for a few days. And it's been a real learning process. It's been a real learning process. I've learned a lot, and I've had to sort of change my thinking around a lot of things. And there's been some gifts. There's been some really, really incredible gifts in it as well. I think that, you know, I've done a lot of reading, obviously, and research into this sort of thing. It's very similar to ME, chronic fatigue syndrome. And I also have a couple of friends with ME, and actually one of the real gifts for me is has been like being able to understand and relate to, like, one of my best friends who has been struggling with ME for years. And I'm just like, wow, you've been struggling with this alone.
Yeah.
And obviously I always wanted to be a good friend to her and support her, but I didn't understand, because obviously how could I? And to be able to kind of understand, and, you know, now we can sort of share our experience with each other, and it's yeah, it feels really I guess, like, every time you go through something that is challenging, it expands your ability to have a deeper level of understanding with other people who have been through these things. So I'm really grateful for that. And also just, you know, again, with like ableism in like our society, it's something that I have been aware of to an extent. And, I remember actually the first time I sort of became properly aware of ableism when I went to a sort of training on accessibility for creating creative projects. And that was the first time I was like, oh my gosh, the ableism of this society is just like chronic and terrible. And sort of now sort of being in a position where I'm unable to participate in the things that I normally would be able to, it's kind of making me understand that in a deeper way. Obviously, like, very aware of like very aware of the fact that I'm speaking from a hugely privileged position as a non-disabled person. Yeah, that feels like a gift. And also I am sort of I have workaholic patterns, very, very workaholic patterns. And part of the reason I think that I'm now sort of like recovering from long COVID is because of my workaholism in the past. And actually, in order to get better, I need to address that. And I'm doing that. And it's really, really hard to kind of like unpick all this programming. But I'm basically taking this summer off. Well, I have to take this summer off because I can't be doing touring and festivals like I would be. But I'm also choosing that.
Well done.
You know, all my mates are posting stuff on Instagram about going to Glastonbury and performing on this stage and that stage. And I am like, no. A part of me is like,
it must be so
and also,
tough.
I'm just like, it feels like a kind of radical act of self-care to just not be doing that. So
yes, and listening.
Shifting my sort of focus from fixating on getting better, which is where I was like near the beginning. I was like, I've got to get better so I can, party in the summer or whatever. Like, got to get better. And now I'm sort of actually just focusing on how can I just really be where I am now, and how can I sort of be present with and feel love and joy and magic, from where I am. And if I get better, I get better, and when I get better, I'll get better, and that'll be when that is.
Yeah, it's so interesting, this journey with COVID. So as I was saying earlier, I've had COVID. I've had it twice, and I am better now, but I'm still on this journey of I can't smell properly, and it's been similar. So I had it first in July 2021, and then again in December 2021, and I still can't smell. And I've got this thing with my taste buds where there's many things that I don't like the taste of, but I do. And it's a horrible experience, and my heart really goes out for the people still living with it, and for the people that maybe are experiencing it right now, including my parents have just got it actually for the first time. But I also it felt like almost like an awakening whilst I was in the experience, about where I wasn't looking after myself, and where I was kind of denying this awareness that my body had of what I needed. And I was just like, push through. And so I still feel that, coronavirus, that word crown, and this experience that on a personal level I went through, of realizing where I was not looking after myself. And I'm making, like you said, it's a journey, and it's a constant, like, we live in a society that is constantly asking us to put external first. But I really feel this going internally, it can just change everything about how you show up, and the compassion that you can bring to a space, and how we can work, making things accessible to everyone instead of for a certain type of human.
Yeah, completely. It's interesting how COVID is sort of bringing a lot of this stuff to the surface. COVID has been bringing a lot of this stuff to the surface, and really kind of shining a light on, I guess, late stage capitalism.
Right? Yeah.
Basically how we are expected to live. And, if we're not functional for productivity, if we're not functional for working, it's like we are of no use.
Yeah.
And then how do we say no to that? And these radical acts of self-care feel like a really important part of the solution, or part of the change.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a radical acceptance in there as well. You know what you were saying, Belle, about originally it was all about, or you were focused a lot on how you could get better, when you're going to get better. And actually now your lens is more, okay, whilst I'm in this space, whilst I'm in this season of this, how can I experience joy? How can I experience beauty? How can I radically accept where I am right now and still live with aliveness? With all of that said, we know that you're at the very, very beginning breaths of debut album territory. And I wondered how this has positively impacted, or how it's impacted your journey within that, and how you're feeling about that creative process.
Yeah. So just before I got COVID, I was awarded the DYCP grant from Arts Council, which is basically 10 grand to develop your creative practice. Yeah, my intention was to kind of have a bunch of time to explore my process and kind of look at what process means to me, and be very intentional about creating new practices actually, and being in process, and but like allowing time for flow, because I find myself so kind of, as we all do, just basically not accessing flow because I'm on Instagram, then I'm on this, then I'm doing that, juggling 10,000 projects.
Head in many spaces.
Yeah. And one thing that I was kind of thinking about is that I'm someone who will find the deep end and jump in. And I have always done that. I've found the deep end and I've jumped in. And I've splashed my way across to the other side, and I've been like, okay, cool, where's the next deep end? And I've never really
So I hear you on that.
had a process of building foundations to get there intentionally. Like, obviously there will have been some of that happening, but I've always sort of, whether it's just a new project, someone says to me, okay, this is the project, this is what we're making, go. I'll be like, right, go, make, do. Do this, make it, go now, on. Productivity. And even like with my own music, it would be, there was such a small amount of time for me to be creating my own work. Maybe it'd be, there's 2 days allocated a month. There was never really any time to be that intentional about it. I'd just be like, right, I've just got to make some stuff. And I remember my friend saying to me once, when I was having a bit of a sort of crisis about it, don't think, just do. And I did find that useful, because I didn't think and I just did, and stuff got done. And at the same time, I was like, oh, where is the space for sort of like what is the manner of this process, and where is the space for spaciousness within that process? And so that was really what I was kind of intending on spending, like looking at, with the money and the time afforded with that. And then after having done that, I was gonna think about making, my idea was like, when I've done that, I will probably be in a very good place to start thinking about my debut album. Then I got COVID, and I couldn't do anything at all. And it was, I mean, so I haven't been doing that. But now I'm in this situation where I guess I feel like I'm a different person, and I have this funding from the Arts Council, which I haven't spent because obviously I haven't been doing anything. And I just feel like, actually, I feel really ready to kind of intentionally start to think about creating my debut album. This summer, I'm not like, I've got enough work so that I can survive. Like, the universe has moved in a way. Okay, I've landed these 2 basically corporate gigs where I'm being paid loads of money to do a bit of beatboxing in the summer, and that is enough money to basically pay for me to survive.
We love it.
Which
we love it.
I'm just like, how has that come up now when I'm not working? That's amazing. So I don't need to do any more work to earn money. So I'm going to, spend the summer, while I can't do festivals and stuff, but I am starting to feel well enough to create things. Doing this kind of DYCP process, looking at creative process and stepping into album territory. Yeah.
This is wonderful.
I just wanted to say one thing, Val, based on this, that it just keeps on coming to my head is, there's a lot of research about we make our best, or we get our best ideas when we're bored.
Yeah.
And it feels like there's this kind of whole, just do it. And it's true. And it's really powerful. But I still do think my best ideas come at the most random times.
Yeah.
There's the being quiet, sitting still, doing nothing moments are when the magic happens. So yes, pressure makes diamonds, but also absolutely nothing. The Big Bang came from absolutely nothing. That's what they say, right?
Absolutely nothing makes everything. Yeah, man. I so agree with that, actually. Like all of my little voice notes on my phone, it's like from when you're cycling somewhere or when you're just, when there's space for things to pop up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So having a bit of all of it, isn't it? It's like there's gold in so many different places, and it's like, okay, where can I harvest the gold from each of these different scenarios?
Spot on.
Thank you for listening. You can connect to us and our guests via the links in each episode's show notes. Before you go, we invite you to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the goodness to come. And if you enjoyed today, perhaps tell a friend to tell a friend. We are always grateful for you, our listeners, for our fabulous guests, and to everyone who has contributed to and been a part of our journey here.
Our music is by Tomo Carter. Everything else is brought to you by us, the PowerUp Power Team.
I'm Ella Mesma.
I am Amma Rouge. And we are PowerUp Podcast.